Buying a franchise is one of the biggest and quite possibly the best financial decisions you'll ever make. And most people do it the exact wrong way. They go out, they Google an industry, they find a brand they've seen somewhere before, and they jump right into the investment process. That's a really good way to make a very expensive mistake. I'm Jeremy Boland with Varsity Franchising. I'm a franchise consultant. I've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years, and I owned my own franchise for almost 17 before I got into franchise consulting to help guide other people through the process so that they can make a better decision when they're trying to determine which franchise is best for them. I'm making this video because lately I've been getting a lot of calls from people and they're saying, hey, what's the hot market right now? What's the hot franchise? Or send me your top 3. The problem is that's not a good way to evaluate franchises. The top 3 for one person in one market are definitely not going to be the top 3 for somebody else in another market, even if they're available. So by the end of this video, my goal is for you to have seen and understood what a good process is for determining what the best franchise is for you, and to understand the resources at your disposal with a franchise consultant that doesn't cost you a dime, and how you can best utilize that. When I work with a client, the first thing we think about when trying to find the brand is the client, not the brand. So what are the client's goals? What role do they want to play in the business? And then what is their exit strategy? When and how do they want to leave the business? So if you can imagine, over 40 plus industries have adopted franchising as a way to scale their businesses, and over 8,000 brands exist. If you try to go out and Google industries, there's no way, unless you do this for a living, that you'd be able to do it properly and be able to meet all of your goals by flipping it on its head like that. It's much easier to start with the goals in mind and start with you. And then when you get to the end and narrow it down, you're going to have plenty of options and plenty of industries to choose from. So the first thing we'll talk about is the goals. So what does a client want? Usually it comes down to time and money. It's how much money you want to invest, how much money you can realistically take out, and how much time you want to spend in the business. And that leads directly into what role you want to play. Do you want to be an everyday owner and this is going to be your full-time job and you're going to be there every day working on the business? Or you have the possibility to be a part-time owner. You can spend 20 hours a week in the business or 10 hours a week in the business, and you can maybe keep your old job, or maybe you're doing something else, but you're hiring somebody else to fill the gaps that you're not going to play. Or possibly you could be an empire builder and you're going to be mostly a manager of a manager, or you're going to be an off-site investor. And then that's going to put you in a position to where somebody else is doing the day-to-day business of the business and you are funding the business. Now, all 3 of those come with trade-offs. The more money you put in, the more money you can take out. The more time you put in, the more money you can take out. All of those things are very relevant. And that leads us to exit strategy. Begin with the end in mind. Do we want to buy a franchise, build it, and flip it in 5 to 10 years? Do you want to have something where you're going to operate it, it's going to be your career, and then when you retire, you're going to sell it? Or is it going to be something that you're going to try to build a legacy with? And so all of those options are good options, and they're different for different people. And not all franchises are in the right stage to be able to do all of those exit strategies. So we take all of that in mind when we start out, and you start out by focusing on the client. The next step in the process is knowing your number. And that's a crucial step because that determines what investments are open to you. It's a very hard wall. If you don't have $18 million to invest in a car wash, then the car washes are off the table. When we start thinking about that number, it's not just how much money is sitting in your bank account. We also have the conversation, we start talking about how much are you willing to borrow to be able to invest into that company, and what is that going to look like? Are you going to have to put up collateral? Do you have collateral to put up? What does your net worth look like? And that's not something that most people just go out and do once a year and say, gee, I wonder what my net worth is. Let's go ahead and calculate it out right now. You also have other options on investing into the company. You may have business partners or family or friends that want to invest in that company. You may have different terms where they may own a piece of that company, or it may be a short-term loan that you pay back over time. You also may have options where you can go out and borrow against your 401k and use those funds to fund your business perfectly legally and without penalty. So knowing your number is a big deal, and there's lots of different ways to determine what that is. If you're sitting at home and you're trying to do the math on the paper, stop. Just call me and let's go through it together, because there's a lot of different options and a lot of that conversation we can do and try to figure out exactly what options are going to be the best ones for you. And especially when we start talking about what does a loan look like, there's a big difference between getting a $600,000 loan where you've got your house as collateral and a $300,000 loan where you don't have collateral at all. Those investment decisions can be a huge difference in how you get started and how you fund your business. So once we know your number, then we want to find your match. And so we start with finding your match by looking at a skills assessment and a confidential questionnaire. I've been using these skills assessments for decades to determine whether employees are going to be good for my company or not, because I have a pretty good idea what skill sets I'm looking for. In this case, it's a little bit different because we look for background, we look for what skills and what roles you're prepared for already, and then we combine that with what roles you choose to play and see if it's going to be something that's going to be a good fit. Then we move from there and we go back to the confidential questionnaire and we take a look at the net worth, we look at the investment level, we look at what businesses are available in the territories around where you're at or where you want to operate. Territories can be a big deal. If everything in a certain franchise that you're looking at is sold out in your territory, then it might not be a good franchise for you. Same thing as if there's 3 or 4 very good franchises in your territory that are in the same industry, then it might not be a good industry for you to jump into. But we take all of that into effect when we're starting to talk about what is going to be a good fit and what's going to be a good match. Now, the last thing we look at in this part of the process is going to be the culture. And that's a really big part. When you join a company, you want to make sure that it's going to fit and it's going to operate the way that you want it to. You want to make sure that your values are aligned with their values. So a big part of that is we ask these franchisors, we say, hey, how do you communicate with your franchisees? And it could be anywhere on the spectrum from faith and family all the way down to some franchises operate and they say, hey, people like to be like employees. They just want to be told what to do. And none of those are wrong, but we want to make sure that when we're looking at franchises that you're going to be operating in an environment where you feel comfortable. The other part of that is we want to make sure that the franchise's goals and vision is going to align with your goals and vision. So if you're looking for something that you can build and flip, then you might want to look for a franchise that's growing in a rapid pattern and you'll be able to sell a resale in a short period of time. If you're looking for something that's legacy based, you're probably going to look for something where they're not necessarily looking to move through private equity after private equity in a short time frame. So when we start talking about those parts of the business, it's definitely a big criteria that narrows down the field for us. Coming out of the matching part of the process, we don't necessarily want to have you matched up with one brand. We're really looking for 3 to 4 brands, ideally in 3 to 4 different industries. And that way you have a large group of people that you can look at to make a decision. When we present those brands, we look at 4 major things. And the first thing is, why do customers love it? So the people that are actually going to give you money, why is it important to them? And why are they going to give you their hard-earned money so that you can be successful? The second part is going to be, what is so great about this franchisor? What makes them the right fit for you, and what can you get from them that you might not get somewhere else? The third thing we'll be taking a look at is that culture piece. So we're going to be looking at values. We're going to be looking at vision. We're going to be looking at how they fit with you. The last thing is going to be overall fit. Why we chose this franchise for you. What is it that's special about this franchise that makes them stand out in your specific criteria? This is also where we might have a short conversation about scaling options in the future. Are there territories available that you'll be able to build out into? Is it going to be something where maybe you want to layer a different franchise on it in the long run? We're going to talk about those different options, which are different for every franchise. But this is also the part of the stage where we're going to introduce you to other franchise professionals. So we'll introduce you to funding specialists, depending on what type of funding you're looking to do when funding a franchise. And then we're also looking at introducing you to legal professionals, and depending on what the franchise entails, maybe you want to talk to a real estate professional, we introduce and make all those introductions into franchise industry professionals. And it's very important that you deal with that because the franchise industry is its own special thing. So no offense against your attorney that wrote your will, he's probably not who you want to look over your franchise documents. Then on top of that, as we introduce you to the franchisors and hand you off to them for that part of the process to go through and investigate and be able to talk to them about their franchise directly, we'll be there for that whole part of the process. So we'll be there to prepare you for the meeting so that you know what questions to ask, or if there's something that comes up and you've got a question about it after the fact, you can always reach out to us. We'll do anything we need to make sure when you walk in those meetings, you're prepared. On the back end, after you have the meeting, we'll do a debrief. Whatever your next meeting is, we'll make sure you're prepared for that as well. So we don't hand you off and then we're done. We hand you off, we introduce you to the franchisors, and then we help you make the decisions and answer your questions all along the way. So a lot of times I will get questions about the franchise disclosure document. I've seen it. I've read it. I know what's in it. If there's anything in there that you specifically need to ask about, I'll tell you, ask about item 3. Ask about item 7. You're going to need to do a pro forma between item 7 and item 19. Ask them about this or that. But for the most part, you're never going to hear a number come out of my mouth. The reason why is it's not my number. I don't work for any of these franchisors, so it's not my number. When you talk to them, they'll be more than happy to give you the numbers from last week. If I were to go out and get a number, it's probably a number from last year at best. So we'd rather you hear it from the horse's mouth, but I assure you, if it's in one of those documents and there's something that you need to be aware of, it'll come up before you meet. At the end of the day, buying a franchise is not a transaction. It's a process. Every step that I just went through is there to protect you, to make sure that if you buy a franchise, you don't buy the wrong franchise.